I grew up on the east side of Columbus, Ohio, in a neighborhood where kids spent their summers playing ball in cracked parking lots and winters shoveling each other's driveways for a few extra dollars. My life wasn't remarkable, and neither was I. My dad left when I was 13, and my mom worked long shifts at a nursing home to keep us afloat. She was the kind of woman who never took a day off, not even when she was sick. I used to admire her resilience, but it also weighed on me, made me feel guilty every time I stumbled. After high school, college was supposed to be my escape. I enrolled in community college with shaky optimism, convinced that if I just kept my head down, I'd make it. But 2 semesters in, I crashed hard. I failed classes I barely attended, dropped essays halfway through, and spent too much time wandering campus like a ghost. When the letter came telling me I was on academic suspension, I hid it from my mom for a week. She found it anyway. "Maybe this is just a break," she told me, setting the letter down on the kitchen counter. "Maybe you'll try again when you're ready." But I wasn't thinking about trying again. I was thinking about how to pay rent for the basement apartment I shared with a buddy, and how to stop feeling like a burden. That's when Ethan stepped back into my life. Ethan and I had been friends since grade school. He was the kind of kid who could charm teachers out of detention and convince you to sneak into movies you didn't even want to see. My mom used to say, "Ethan's a smooth talker. Don't follow him off a cliff." I should have listened. We'd lost touch after high school, but in the spring of 2016, he showed up at my door with that same easy grin like no time had passed. "Heard you're looking for work," he said. "My uncle's got this construction company. It's tough, but it pays." I didn't hesitate. Within a week, I was hauling steel beams and mixing cement. The work was brutal, sun beating down on our backs, hands blistered from shovels, but the money was steady. Ethan and I carpooled every day, blasting music on the freeway, talking about nothing. It felt good to have someone familiar beside me again. But there was always this edge with Ethan. He had a way of nudging you into things you weren't sure about. If you resisted, he'd act offended or call you boring until you gave in. That summer, after we pulled 72 straight hours on a bridge project, he leaned back in the truck and said, "We deserve to celebrate like kings tonight." I wanted to crash into my mattress, but he wouldn't let up. "Come on, man. One night. You'll thank me." I should have said no, but with Ethan, no never really felt like an option. The bar he dragged me to was one of those downtown spots you wouldn't find unless someone showed you. Neon signs blinked above sticky floors, the air heavy with sweat, beer, and the tang of cheap cologne. I nursed a whiskey I couldn't afford while Ethan slapped backs and laughed too loud, making his rounds like he owned the place. That's when he introduced me to Rachel. She was stunning in a way that made you second-guess yourself. Dark hair spilling over her shoulders, eyes that seemed to linger just a second too long. Ethan leaned in, grinning. "This is Rachel, a friend of a friend. Thought you two might hit it off." Her handshake was warm, her smile even warmer. She laughed at my stupid stories, leaned in close when the music got louder, and at one point whispered, "You should be careful. My ex gets jealous when he sees me talk to new guys." I laughed it off, but her eyes darted around the room, scanning faces like she meant it. I told myself she was just teasing, that this was part of her charm. By midnight, Ethan had vanished with some of his coworkers, leaving Rachel and me pressed into a corner booth. She suggested grabbing food, but when I mentioned the diner near my apartment, she insisted we head back to my place instead. "Too crowded out here," she said. Something in my gut twisted. I wasn't the type to bring strangers home, but she seemed so insistent, so comfortable. I convinced myself I was overthinking it. We walked the short stretch back to my apartment on Summit Street. The night air was thick, the kind that clings to your skin. Inside, Rachel kicked off her heels like she'd been there 100 times. She drifted to the couch, scrolling through her phone while I rummaged for snacks. It felt rushed, unnatural, but her presence pulled me in like a tide. I told myself I was lucky. I told myself this was the night Ethan promised, celebrating like kings. I didn't realize the crown came with a noose. Around 2 in the morning, the banging started. It wasn't a polite knock. It was the kind of pounding that rattles walls and makes your blood run cold. Rachel's face drained of color. She whispered, "That's my ex. He must have followed us." Before I could move, the door swung open. Two men stormed in, one gripping a metal pipe, the other with a pistol half tucked into his waistband. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Who the hell are you?" the one with the pipe barked. "Think you can steal my girl?" I stammered. "I didn't, she..." The pistol guy shoved me against the wall, hard enough to knock the wind out of me. They tore through my drawers, kicking over a chair, demanding money. I had $80 in my wallet. That was it. "Cheap night, huh?" the man with the gun sneered. The pipe pressed against my neck, cold and unyielding. My hands shook as I held out the bills. I waited for Rachel to scream, to beg them to stop, to do anything. But she stood in the corner, arms crossed, silent. Her eyes never met mine. When it was over, they left with my cash and whatever loose change they found. The door slammed, footsteps echoing down the hall. I turned to Rachel. The couch was empty. She was gone. No words, no goodbye. Just gone. I sat there for hours, heart pounding, staring at the broken pieces of my apartment. The silence was deafening. The next morning I called Ethan. He answered with a groggy laugh. "Dude, what happened last night? You bail early?" I told him everything. The men, the robbery, Rachel's silence. He chuckled like I was exaggerating. "Bro, maybe you drank too much. You probably just got jumped. Happens downtown all the time." "No," I snapped. "She knew them. She didn't even try to stop them." He paused, then brushed it off. "Man, you gotta stop being so paranoid." But I couldn't shake the feeling. A week later, I went back to the bar, hoping for answers. I asked the bartender if he'd seen Rachel around. He frowned. "Rachel? Who's that? I've never seen her here." I described her, described the two guys. He shook his head. "Not ringing a bell. Sorry." That's when the pieces clicked. Ethan had been the one to push me out that night, to introduce me to Rachel, to disappear at just the right time. The whole thing felt staged, like I'd been set up for a con I didn't even know I was part of. I confronted him once more. "Were you in on it?" He rolled his eyes. "You're losing it, man. You think I'd do that to you? We've been friends since we were kids." But his grin didn't reach his eyes. And I realized I didn't know Ethan anymore, not the way I thought I did. Maybe I never had. I quit the construction job 2 days later, told Ethan I was done. He shrugged like it didn't matter, like I was just another name he could replace on the crew. For weeks I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Rachel's face in the corner, cold and detached. I heard the metal pipe scraping my neck, the laughter of the man with the gun. I kept asking myself, was Ethan behind it, or was it just a cruel coincidence I'll never know? What I do know is this: betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the person who knows your weaknesses best, who knows how to push you where you don't want to go. I had trusted Ethan with my safety, and he may have sold me out for a quick payday or a cheap thrill. I cut him out of my life completely. Blocked his number, moved apartments, started over. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Now, when I walk into a bar and someone smiles too easily, leans in too close, I hear Rachel's whisper in my head. "Be careful, my ex is watching." And I listen. Because the lesson I learned is one that sticks with me every single day. Sometimes the real danger isn't a stranger in the dark. Sometimes it's the friend standing right beside you. Never ignore your instincts and never give blind trust to those who've already shown you they thrive on control. A friend who pushes you into danger isn't a friend at all. They're a threat wearing a familiar face. When I first moved to Chicago in 2018, I thought I'd finally found the version of myself I'd always been chasing. Back in my hometown in Indiana, I was the quiet kid, the one who stayed home on Friday nights while everyone else hit bonfires or football games. I liked books more than crowds, and that never changed. Graduate school in Chicago gave me purpose. I was knee-deep in American literature and tutoring freshman students at the university. On top of that, I worked part-time at a bookstore that smelled like paper dust and brewed coffee, a place where silence was an asset. I wasn't a party person, not then, not ever. But Tyler, he was my contradiction. We'd met during my undergrad years, assigned as lab partners in a general ed science class neither of us cared about. He was talkative, full of charm, the kind of guy who made strangers laugh within seconds. Where I leaned toward caution, he leaned toward chaos. He never accepted a no without needling you until you gave in. "Come on, man," he'd say. "Life's too short to be boring." By the fall of 2019, I was buried under graduate seminars and late bookstore shifts. I wanted quiet nights, coffee, and early sleep. Tyler wanted the opposite. That October, he called me 3 times in 1 week about a rooftop birthday party for a coworker of his named Melissa. "Come on," he teased over the phone. "You seriously gonna sit around grading essays while half the city's watching fireworks from a rooftop?" "I've got class in the morning," I muttered. "Bro, it's a Friday. No one cares. Free drinks, skyline views. Melissa's turning 21. It's gonna be legendary." That was Tyler's trick. He made you feel like you were missing history itself if you stayed home. And I was tired. Tired of being the guy who always said no. Tired of feeling like the world was spinning without me. Against my better judgment, I told him I'd go. The warehouse on West Fulton Street looked like it hadn't hosted life in years. Cracked windows, rusted loading docks, graffiti peeling off brick walls. The kind of place you'd cross the street to avoid after dark. "This is it?" I asked, staring at the hulking structure. Tyler grinned, adjusting his jacket against the biting wind. "Trust me, man. It's cooler inside." The main elevator was broken, so everyone was using a freight elevator that looked like it had survived 2 world wars. It rattled and groaned as we rose, metal screeching with every floor we passed. I pressed my hand against the wall, half joking, half serious. "If this thing drops, you're covering my funeral." Tyler just laughed. "Adds to the adventure, right?" When the gate screeched open at the 23rd floor, we stepped into silence. Balloons still floated, streamers hung crooked, and a banner screamed, "Happy 21, Melissa," in gold letters. But the tables were abandoned, plates of half-eaten cake sat untouched, and someone's phone buzzed endlessly under a chair. A cold wave crept down my spine. "Where is everyone?" I asked. Tyler shrugged, grabbing a half-full cup from a table like it was no big deal. "Probably inside. Chill, man." But something was wrong, and deep down, I already knew it. The rooftop stretched out beneath the skyline, Chicago glittering like broken glass under the October sky. The wind whipped my jacket open and I shivered as I scanned the space. Decorations fluttered, half-blown candles flickered in the dark, but the place felt abandoned. A party that had ended in a hurry. Then I noticed them. 3 pairs of shoes lined neatly along the edge of the roof. They looked almost deliberate, placed side by side, not tossed or forgotten. Next to them were faint scuff marks, the kind you'd see if someone had been dragged. My stomach turned. I bent down, running my fingers over the concrete. "Tyler, what the hell is this?" He barely glanced over. "Dude, you're overthinking again. People get drunk, do dumb stuff. Relax." But then I saw him. Behind one of the HVAC units, a young man slumped against the wall, blood soaking his shirt. His throat was a torn mess, and his fingers tapped the ground in shaky rhythm. It took me a second to recognize it. ... SOS. My chest tightened. I dropped beside him. "Hey, stay with me, what happened?" His lips trembled, voice broken. She pushed them all." The words barely left his mouth before his head sagged, eyes rolling back. I stumbled to my feet, heart hammering. "Tyler, we need help now." But before I could move, the heavy rooftop door slammed shut. The metallic clang echoed across the roof. I ran to it, yanking at the handle, but it was chained from the outside. The realization hit like ice water. We were trapped, I turned to Tyler, panic rising, but his face didn't mirror mine. He wasn't shocked, wasn't horrified. He smirked just slightly and muttered under his breath, "Guess it's starting." My whole body went cold. "What do you mean, starting?" That's when Melissa appeared. She stepped out from the shadows near the stairwell, her dress torn, makeup smeared across her face. In her hand was a hammer streaked with blood. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but her voice was steady, sharp. "They laughed at me for years," she said. "Treated me like trash. Tonight they finally understood what it feels like." The hammer gleamed under the rooftop lights. I couldn't move. The pieces clicked together. Melissa's birthday, the abandoned rooftop, the lined-up shoes, the injured man. This wasn't a party. It was a massacre. I turned to Tyler, desperate. "You knew about this?" He didn't answer. His silence was worse than words. Melissa pointed the hammer at me. "Don't worry, you're not on my list. Tyler brought you as a witness. He thought you should see what real payback looks like." My knees locked. "Witness? Tyler, what the hell is she talking about?" Melissa's eyes darted toward the bleeding man, who was still twitching on the ground. She raised the hammer and brought it down with a sickening crack. His body stilled. I screamed, lurching forward, but Tyler grabbed my arm. "Don't," he hissed. I jerked away, staring at him in disbelief. "You brought me here to watch this? Are you insane?" His lips pressed tight. No explanation, no remorse. Melissa stepped closer, the hammer dripping. "You see now? This city chews people up, spits them out, laughs in their faces. I'm just giving them a taste of their own medicine." Her words echoed in my head, mingling with the whistle of the wind. It didn't matter if I believed her, if I pitied her. She was dangerous, and Tyler, my friend, had dragged me straight into her revenge. Sirens wailed below, faint but growing louder. Someone had called the cops. Maybe a neighbor had heard screams. Maybe one of Melissa's victims had gotten a message out. Melissa tilted her head, almost smiling. Too late for them. She moved toward me, hammer raised. I stumbled backward, grabbing the first thing I could find, a broken chair leg lying near the table. My hand shook as I raised it like a weapon. "Stay back," she laughed bitterly. "You're not on my list. But if you get in the way, you'll join them." I swung when she lunged, wood cracking against her arm. The hammer clattered to the ground. I dove for it, but she slammed into me, nails clawing my neck. We crashed against the concrete, her breath hot against my face. "Tyler," I screamed. "Help me!" But he just stood there, frozen, eyes wide, hands limp at his sides. He wasn't my friend anymore. He was a spectator. The rooftop door burst open with a deafening crash. Police officers stormed in, guns drawn. They yanked Melissa off me as she shrieked Tyler's name over and over, spitting blood and curses. "Tyler!" she howled as they dragged her away. "You promised! You said you'd stay!" I collapsed against the wall, chest heaving. Tyler backed away, pale, trembling. He looked like a boy caught stealing candy, not a man who had led me into a massacre. In the aftermath, the story spread fast. Melissa had planned it for weeks, drugging drinks, luring her old tormentors to the rooftop, chaining the exits so no one could run. The cops found her notebook later, pages filled with names, reasons, grievances, a kill list dressed up as a birthday party guest list. But the detail that haunted me most wasn't her rage. It was Tyler's silence. He had known. He had dragged me there as if it were some twisted game. He never admitted it outright, but I saw it in his eyes. He wanted me to witness something unforgettable, to share in the chaos, maybe even to validate his own sick fascination. We never spoke again. I blocked his number, dropped the bookstore job, and moved out of Chicago within months. But some nights when the wind rattles my windows, I see those 3 pairs of shoes lined up along the edge. I hear the pounding of the rooftop door. I feel Tyler's silence like a blade between my ribs. Trust is fragile. It can be shattered without a word, without even an action. Sometimes it's shattered by what someone doesn't do. The lesson I carry is simple but permanent. Betrayal doesn't always come in the form of enemies. Sometimes, it's your friend standing beside you, smiling while you're pushed toward the edge. Never ignore the quiet unease in your gut. A true friend protects you from danger. A false one walks you straight into it. High school has a way of magnifying who you are. If you're confident, it turns you into a star. If you're awkward, it traps you in shadows. Back in 2012, when I was 17 and a junior at Ridgefield High in Connecticut, I lived almost entirely in those shadows. I wasn't a loner exactly, but I wasn't the kind of kid anyone remembered once the bell rang. My world was small, my little brother at home, the video games we played together, and the comfort of Friday nights spent watching movies instead of pretending I fit in at somebody's crowded house party. Logan was different. He was loud in a way that made people listen, tall, with messy blonde hair, and a grin that made teachers forgive him for being late. He and I had been friends since middle school, back when we bonded over skateboards and comic books. But by junior year, Logan was slipping into a new orbit, one filled with parties, beer, and kids who barely knew my name. He never let me drift too far, though. He'd toss an arm around my shoulders in the cafeteria and say, "Don't go hermit on me, man. You gotta live a little." That's exactly what he said the night he convinced me to go to his cousin's party. It was early October, the kind of cool evening where the leaves crunch under your sneakers and your breath clouds the air. Logan and I walked up the long driveway of a 2-story colonial on the edge of town. The windows glowed gold, laughter spilling into the night. I hesitated at the door, my chest tight. "One night won't kill you," Logan said, flashing me a grin. I forced a smile. "Easy for you to say." The second we stepped inside, chaos swallowed me. Music pounded so loud it shook my ribs. Kids crowded every room, red cups in hand, voices raised in drunken celebration. I followed Logan like a shadow, sticking close as he dragged me from group to group. He thrived in it, feeding off the energy while I kept nodding awkwardly, trying not to trip over my own feet. For a while, it almost felt okay. Logan never let me get too lost, circling back every few minutes with a joke or a drink I pretended to sip. But by midnight, the house started to empty. Parents' curfews, hangovers setting in. The living room thinned until only a handful of us were left, cleaning up bottles and sweeping pizza crusts off the floor. The music was lower, voices softer, and for the first time that night, I let myself relax. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. It started with the sound of the front door slamming open. A gust of cold night air swept through the hallway, and before anyone could react, a woman stumbled into the living room. She looked like she'd been fighting ghosts, hair tangled, mascara running, her clothes wrinkled and dirty. She was maybe late 30s, though the glassy rage in her eyes made her look older. "This is my house too," she screamed, her voice sharp enough to cut. "You think you can lock me out?" Everyone froze. Logan's cousin, a skinny kid with braces and nervous eyes, muttered under his breath, "That's my dad's ex-wife. She's not supposed to be here." Before anyone could move, the woman grabbed a lamp and hurled it against the wall. The bulb exploded in a spray of glass, light dying instantly. She kicked the TV stand, sending the screen crashing to the floor. "You don't get to erase me!" she shrieked. Panic broke. People bolted for the back door, shoving each other down the hallway. I stumbled after them, my pulse thundering in my ears. But Logan's hand gripped my arm, dragging me toward the bathroom at the end of the hall. "Go," he ordered, shoving me inside. "Lock yourself in. I'll handle this." My hands fumbled with the lock as I slammed the door shut. My chest heaved as shouts echoed outside, glass breaking, people crying, someone begging for help. I pressed my back against the door, knees trembling. Then I heard it. Logan's voice. Calm. Too calm. "You shouldn't be here," he said, low but clear. "But since you are, Maybe we can make a deal." My skin crawled. A deal? With her? The woman's bitter laugh sliced through the air. Logan's voice followed, sharp and steady. "Look, he's in the bathroom. You wanted to scare someone, right? He's weak. Easy target." I froze. The words sank in like poison. He was talking about me. My whole body went numb. I pressed my ear to the door, desperate to believe I'd misheard. Maybe I'd twisted his words, maybe he was trying to calm her down. But then came the footsteps, heavy, uneven, thudding closer with each step. The bathroom door rattled. A woman's voice sang through the crack. "Open up. Your friend said you were in here." My hands clamped over my mouth to hold back a sob. "Please," I whispered. "Please, no." The handle jerked violently. She slammed her fist against the wood, the sound echoing in my chest. "Open the door!" I pressed my weight against it, my back digging into the knob. My heart felt like it would burst out of my ribs. I could hear Logan's voice somewhere behind her, low and indistinct. But he wasn't stopping her. He wasn't defending me. He was feeding her. The chaos outside grew louder, sirens wailing in the distance, the stomp of boots against the porch. The woman cursed and pounded once more before footsteps retreated down the hall. Shouting followed, then the muffled sounds of a struggle. I stayed frozen, breath ragged, until a sharp knock hit the bathroom door. A man's voice. "Police! You can come out now, it's safe." I didn't move. I couldn't. My body had turned to stone and all I could hear was Logan's voice on repeat. "He's weak, easy target." When I finally stepped out, the living room looked like a war zone. The TV lay shattered on the floor, chairs overturned, broken glass glinting in the carpet. 2 officers had the woman pinned against the wall, handcuffing her as she cursed and kicked. Logan stood near the couch, his face pale but unreadable, arms crossed like he was watching a movie. "You okay, kid?" one of the officers asked me. I nodded shakily, though nothing felt okay. My eyes darted to Logan, waiting for some explanation, some apology. But he only shrugged, like we'd both just been unlucky bystanders. Later, outside, when the police cars pulled away, I cornered him by the driveway. "What the hell was that?" My voice cracked. "You told her I was in the bathroom. You gave me up." Logan's face twisted into a smirk. "I was just trying to calm her down. You're being dramatic." "Dramatic," I spat. "She was going to come after me because of you." He rolled his eyes. "And she didn't. You're fine. Don't make this bigger than it was." I stared at him, searching for guilt, for shame, for any crack in his mask. There was nothing. Just that casual dismissal, as if my fear was an exaggeration, as if my life hadn't been hanging on the turn of a lock. That was the moment something broke. I never went to another party after that. I never answered another one of Logan's calls. He tried a few times in the weeks that followed, sending texts with jokes, acting like nothing had happened. But I couldn't unhear his voice, calm and casual, offering me up like a bargaining chip. At school, he carried on as usual, his grin still winning over teachers and friends. But whenever he spotted me in the hallway, his smile faltered, just for a second. Maybe he knew I'd never look at him the same. Maybe he didn't care. Years later, when I think back to that night, it's not the woman's screams or the shattering glass that haunt me. It's the silence between Logan and me in that driveway, when I realized he wasn't my friend at all. A locked bathroom saved my life, but it also showed me the truth. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from strangers storming through the door. Sometimes it comes from the person who walked in with you. A true friend protects you when fear closes in. A false one sacrifices you to save themselves. Trust should never be given blindly, especially to those who treat loyalty like it's disposable.